I'm sure you remember back when I talked about Dead by Daylight in my Fun in Video Games video. Well, I wanted to dive deeper and talk more about it. This video will be split up into 3 sections: the good of Dead by Daylight, the bad of Dead by Daylight, and the ugly of Dead by Daylight. Up first, we'll talk about the good. So what exactly is good about DBD? To start off, this game's core gameplay is amazing and there has never been another game like it since its release. The gameplay loop is phenomenal, unlike a lot of other games out there, which lets you pour thousands of hours into all while still learning the game. Speaking of which, this game has tons of perks that let you do different things. You can even combo some of these to make for some interesting builds. As a survivor, you can even bring items that'll give you an advantage over the killer or help you do things easier, such as using a medkit or bringing a toolbox. And with these items, you have add-ons which can also improve the items you're using. As for survivor perks, some can give you the upper hand in multiple scenarios. Want to get gens done quickly? Bring Prove Thyself. Want to make sure you can get away from the killer and give yourself distance? Bring any exhaustion perks such as Sprint Burst or Balance Landing. Want to go treasure hunting? Bring Plunderer's Instinct and Ace in the Hole for added value to the item you get. Or maybe you're interested in playing killer, then maybe you'd want to bring Pop Goes the Weasel to stop gens from being done so fast. Or maybe you just want an idea of where you should go after hooking someone, in which case you can bring Barbecue and Chili. There's tons of different perks that all do different things that you could personally use to your advantage, and that's what's great about this game. It's always fun to try and guess your opponent's loadout while in chase or just playing throughout the match. Another great thing about this game is just the chases themselves. Personally, as a survivor being chased, it's extremely fun to loop the killer while your teammates are busy doing generators. Long chases especially make me feel really good. Mind gaming the killer is also great because if you can predict their mind game, you just feel like you have a giga brain. There's plenty of perks that can also help you in chase, like for example, Dead Hard or certain exhaustion perks like Balance Landing or Lithe. Even mind gaming certain killers' powers is great, such as a Nurse's Blink or Pyramid Head's Punishment of the Damned. As for killer, the same can be said about the mind games. You can always make sure your survivor second guesses themselves and lead them right to you if you play your cards right. Ending chases early as killer is always extremely good for you, so you can go back to pressuring gens and making sure they don't get all of them done. This game does a very good job of making the game feel different on both survivor and killer side. It feels like 2 different games in one, which is a bonus for the longevity of the game. Now we're on to the bad of the game. So what exactly is so bad about it? Well, to start things off, let's talk about something a little simple and move on to more complex things. So for starters, the balancing of this game can be a little atrocious. Considering there has never been a game like this, it's extremely difficult to figure out what's balanced and what isn't, so there's nothing to really go off of. However, as a community, plenty of people can agree that certain things are just completely annoying, like people running Object of Obsession. Pair this perk with a 4-man squad all using communications, and it's a terrible day for the killer. The person running this perk can easily give out information to their friends, meanwhile the rest can be doing gens or avoiding the killer. This, in a way, completely breaks the game in a lot of killers that need to set up, such as Trapper or Hag. But for the most part, it's a bit uncommon to see these sort of things. Another big issue people seem to disagree with is certain strong builds or items that survivors for the most part have. And from what I've been told, the meta build for survivors has been the same for almost 4 years now, which consists of Unbreakable, Decisive Strike, and a variation of different perks such as Iron Will, Adrenaline, Dead Hard, Borrow Time, or other exhaustion perks. Items and add-ons / perk combos are also some of the other issues the community can agree on to be bad. For example, at the moment, keys. Keys let you escape through the hatch after completing a certain amount of generators and depending on how many survivors are left in the trial. So if 3 people are still left in the game, they would only need to do 4 generators and then can just escape through the hatch without the need of finishing the last generator to open the exits. However, recently the devs have told us that they will be receiving a nerf later on. As for add-ons, there are certain add-ons that can be used to abuse certain things as a killer, such as a Huntress running Iridescent Head with Infantry Belt to receive 3 insta-down hatchets, or Freddy running 2 rope add-ons to make things go by so much slower and make it miserable to play the match. These things can be considered unbalanced, but as a killer, you can do whatever it is you want to win games, but most people will just think you're an asshole for using things like this because it makes the game unfun to play. Speaking of things that aren't fun to play against, there's a few killers that make it almost impossible to mind game or have fun against. Of course, the most obvious is the Spirit. The fact that there is no indicator to tell where or when the Spirit is phasing makes it almost impossible to mind game in a chase. She could literally just stand still and get a free hit on you because you have no clue if she's even phasing at all. This combined with the perk Strider makes Spirit extremely easy to play and just kinda makes chases almost non-existent. Other killers that could be considered unfun to go against are killers such as Pyramid Head for the fact that he can just farm people off hook or out of his cage without fear of borrow time or decisive strike, which in my opinion is completely irritating. Or even more irritating than that, Deathslinger. This killer is widely hated by most survivors, including myself, for the fact that he can just end loops instantaneously and has no cooldown for aiming or quickscoping, and doesn't have to charge his shot like Huntress normally does. Most people can't react quick enough to dodge his shots and makes it impossible to really loop him. And even if you don't get caught, but he can't hit you, if he stuns himself, he gets a free hit on you, which I personally do not agree with. He literally doesn't even have to shoot you to get a hit on you. Just pretending to shoot can make the survivor paranoid and lets Deathslinger catch up to you without even firing a single shot. This killer's power, in my opinion, isn't really fair and is just so boring to fight against. But enough of that. Now we're going to get into the ugly of Dead by Daylight. Now when I say ugly, I usually am talking about things that shouldn't even be in the game, such as bugs or glitches, or issues the main mechanics in the game have trouble with. So to start off, the hitboxes. There have been so many instances where I just am so mind boggled by the fact that certain hits even hit me and injure me, and I always exclaim that they're bullshit and shouldn't have hit in the first place. Now this can be a number of reasons, but the main reason usually is the killer has shitternet. I'm sure you guys can guess what that means, I shouldn't need to explain it. But because the server prioritizes the killer will always see hits that make sense to them, but not for the survivor. And this in itself is extremely irritating considering people use VPNs to abuse this and let them get cheesy hits that would never work in the first place. People that use VPNs to do this sort of stuff is also what ruins the game sometimes for me. They always force me to drop pallets early or make me doubt myself when vaulting a window. And what's worst of all is they always seem to gloat in the endgame chat saying dumb stuff like easy. And for some reason they always seem to be playing doctor. Another thing is the amount of bugs and glitches that seem to come out of every single chapter. For example, the widely known locker glitch where your animations get bugged whenever the killer does an action such as vaulting or picking up survivors and hooking them. Or another glitch where sometimes totems just aren't cleansable and make certain bugged hexes impossible to be broken and is just an automatic loss for the survivors. Or another widely popular issue is being exhausted on the floor after using Dead Hard. Just makes you think, why even bother running this perk if I'm just going to be exhausted on the floor anyways? Another issue is the fact that gen speeds just seem way too fast to even try and enjoy playing killer. Survivors just seem to naturally have the upper hand and is ultimately the main reason why there are less killer mains than survivors. Of course, when you first pick up the game, you'd think you'd want a main killer since the name in itself makes it seem like you're the main threat, but you'll later come to realize that the real threat is the survivors. Killer even gives me anxiety when I play because of the amount of things that survivors can do to make sure they win. Even if you end a chase quickly, 3 gens can pop and at that point you've already lost the game. It's just really not fun, at least in my opinion. And lastly, another main issue is the fact that almost half the perks in this game are ultimately useless or way too quirky to try and get to work. The meta has been the same for survivors and not much has changed. All of the good perks for survivor are minimal to how many bad perks there are. 6 pages of perks can just be cut down to a mere half a page of perks in terms of usefulness. The devs really need to buff all the bad perks to be considered useful and to just shake up the meta and make things interesting. Like for example, I bet you 99% of the games you play, at least 2 people have Decisive Strike on, and that's because it's one of the strongest perks in the game for Survivor. The same can be said about Killer. 99% of killers most likely have Barbecue and Chili because the aura info is so good, but on top of that, an extra 25% of blood points for each survivor you hook up to 100% bonus. This game desperately needs more perk buffs and technical fixes and should really consider having one chapter for the game be purely for fixing up all the issues the game has. So, what do you think? Do you agree with what I said, or do you disagree? Let me know down below, and if I missed something, let me know as well. Do you think this game is perfect the way it is, or do you think this game needs some form of tweaking? Thanks for watching.